All right, we're going to continue our roundtable on the Eurozone debt crisis. David Gilmore, partner at Foreign Exchange Analytics, joins us. And we also are talking with Jonathan Lemco, senior analyst at the Vanguard Group. David, let me ask you, because Nouriel Roubini today said that he doesn't think Europe even has enough money to bail out Spain if they need it. How much are we thinking it's going to cost? I noticed that the Irish bailout, the number keeps growing and growing and growing, and a lot of people are even including $17.5 billion that the Irish are providing themselves in that figure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a reasonable question. The difference with Spain is that they've, like Ireland, actually, Ireland started with a balanced budget and got into trouble because its banks blew themselves up on bad loans and CDOs and the story that we're all familiar with out of the U.S. financial crisis. So Spain starts with a pretty good balance sheet fiscally, so not nearly as, in dire situation like the Greeks, but their banks are weak, and their banks may need help. And capitalizing Spanish banks, and Spanish banks are very tied into Portuguese banks. So if Portugal goes, you've got contagion right there in the Iberian Peninsula. That's the problem. I don't have a number for you as how much it's going to cost to bail out Spanish banks, but it would have to be well north of 100 billion euros for starters. So, pretty quickly this thing starts to look a lot bigger than TARP. I mean, you've got Greece and Portugal, and you're pretty much, 15% of the total TARP cost.
Yeah,
it's expensive when it comes to bailing out countries.
It definitely starts to add up. Jonathan, I'm thinking, what at some point do the stronger countries, a la Germany, start to say, you know what, we're in good shape. Maybe their citizens don't want to be helping out all these other countries that are in much worse fiscal condition. I mean, do we start to see some of that disconnect at any point, or do you think they're going to stay united and get through this crisis?
I think actually they survive this thing. I think it's going to be tough. I personally believe that Spain has some vulnerability, but actually I think it stops at Spain. I think that Spain survives this because it's got diversified industry. Because it's a rich country, it's the fourth richest country in the Eurozone. It has certain strengths that the smaller economies of Portugal and Ireland and Greece simply don't have. So although Spain has a serious fiscal problem, it has wealth, something that the others don't. So I do think you ring fence this, at least. So from a macroeconomic point of view, the fundamentals of Spain are much better. But that said, right now there's just tremendous fear out there, and investors are not discriminating whatsoever. And from the perspective of Germany, the Eurozone has been financially advantageous for Germany in a lot of ways. So I think they would go to great steps not to end this thing, despite the fact that within Germany there's a lot of domestic opposition to bailing out the laggards.
But how long, Jonathan, does it go on for? I'm thinking, 6 months ago we were talking about Greece, here we are talking about Ireland. I mean, do they quickly tie this all up and get it done with, or does it kind of have a slow bleed, if you will, maybe over the next 12 months?
I believe there could be a slow bleed, as you put it, and I think at some point the European Central Bank in particular will just have to take really hard steps. Maybe one of those important steps will be buying the debt of some of these countries in a much more massive way than they have already. That's a possibility. There are other things that they can do as well. But at the end of the day, the loss of face to the Eurozone, not to mention the financial cost of a restructuring, is so great that they will do whatever they can do for this thing to survive. But we'll be living with it for 6 months, a year. You name it. I mean, this could go on for a very long time.
Well, what about the question, and David, I'll come back to you, the question of the EU being able to afford this? I mean, HSBC estimates a Spanish bailout would cost north of 350 billion euros. It's obviously a huge number, but we were talking about $1 trillion rescue package last year. So don't they have the means?
Well, they do, but they're not, politically it's not feasible. I think all they can do in the very short term is try to address these issues as they come up and try to get to them early enough before they become bigger. And I think that's been the problem here. Europe doesn't have a central government. It's got a very messy management of its communication policy to the markets. It's reacting late. It has resources, but it hasn't marshaled them quickly because of it's very difficult to do. And Germany and France sort of set the tone for everyone else, and they have a very different economic agenda at the moment. So it's almost impossible. What I would say is that in this new package that was discussed and agreed to at the weekend, Germany and France insisted and got haircuts on bondholders after the middle of 2013 in the event that there does need to be debt restructuring. So they haven't removed that guarantee of government debt beyond 2013, and that quickly overwhelmed any benefit from securing a package, an 85 billion euro package for Ireland.
Do you think that's hurt the situation?
What we're dealing with
you think
today.
That's made it worse?
I think it has, and I think it was an issue that really started the whole process with Ireland in the very beginning, back in late October, when the French president and the German chancellor were talking about this very thing. And then they said, no, it's not going to apply until mid-2013. Well, these countries are not going to be in much better fiscal shape in 2013. There will be debt restructurings. I think Europe's headed towards a two-tier system. There's going to be an A euro and a B euro. And that's the only way I can see around this. And that will involve a lot of debt restructuring
that is
in a few years.
That is
a big change.
That is very interesting. All right, David, hey, thanks so much for joining us. David Gilmore there from Foreign Exchange Analytics. Jonathan Lemco there from Vanguard Group. Very interesting discussion, one we will no doubt continue to have on Street Smart.